Picture this. You're standing outside your home, late at night. If you look up, how many stars would you be able to see? Dozens? Just a few? None? If you're in the group that can't see many stars, you may be surprised by how different things were just a few decades ago. For most of history, countless stars were visible in the night sky, but these days, approximately 80% of the world's population lives under a sky partially obscured by light pollution. Light pollution is an environmental issue caused by an excess of artificial light at night. When lights are left on all night, some of it will shine upwards, creating a sky glow that outshines starlight by comparison, blocking the stars from sight. Therefore, the more lights left on, the dimmer the stars will appear to be by comparison. This is most obvious in the difference between urban skies, where lots of artificial light is present, to suburban skies, with considerably less light, and rural skies, where man-made structures are few and far between. Even these places, however, still see some sky glow from bright cities in the distance, which is enough to prevent them from seeing truly dark skies, which in many areas of the world can only be seen far from population centers or in special dark sky preserves. Light pollution poses a threat to much more than our view of the stars. It's also a major environmental and health concern. It threatens the survival of wildlife, disorienting and misleading those that are attracted to light, such as migratory birds, insects, and hatchling sea turtles. Humans are also vulnerable to the effects of the light pollution we create, as the excess light disrupts our circadian rhythms and lowers sleep quality, which can result in weakened immune systems and a whole host of other potential health problems. But the issues don't stop there. Excess light pointed aimlessly into the sky also wastes large amounts of energy, and by extension, money. Up to $3 billion worth of energy each year in the U.S. alone. Over the past decade, many cities have tried to combat this by swapping out incandescent light bulbs for LEDs. As LEDs produce more light at a lower energy cost, this should save on lighting expenses in theory. However, much of that money has been reinvested in putting up more lights along city outskirts, leaving the energy expense mostly the same while light pollution increases. This is evidenced by light level maps such as this one of Milan. Notice how lighting decreases in the city's center, but increases along the outskirts, extending the radius of the light-polluted area. Although it's concerning, it's important to note that all of these problems are fixable. There are ways to keep necessary areas lit during the night while cutting back on light pollution if the right strategies are used, such as shielding lights to keep them targeted at the ground, switching to warm-colored bulbs that are less disruptive, and turning off or completely removing lights to keep only those that are useful. Some cities have already succeeded using these methods. One such success story is Flagstaff, Arizona, which has made efforts to minimize its light pollution for decades. As a result, it releases far less light pollution than other cities of similar size, such as Cheyenne, Wyoming, as shown here. Flagstaff is solid proof that these methods work and that light pollution can be contained on large scales with the right strategies. However, in order to make progress on that front, we must first spread the word, letting the general public know that there is a problem that needs fixing in the first place. This brings us to the core goal of our project, identifying and comparing different approaches to educating the public, specifically through the Planetarium. Through its immersive visuals, this medium is an ideal way to communicate important details effectively while keeping the audience engaged. We were also interested in testing a narrative learning approach, as processing information through the lens of stories can make it easier to understand and remember. On top of that, we were wondering how the incorporation of local elements into the story could affect learning outcomes, giving audiences something they could recognize and relate to, and potentially increasing their understanding and investment along the way. With these ideas in mind, we set out to design a planetarium show with a narrative structure, including local elements to teach families about the science behind, problems with, and potential solutions to light pollution. Then evaluate its effectiveness at increasing audience knowledge, awareness, and willingness to act against it. Two different shows were used, both covering generally the same information about light pollution within a time frame of 20 to 30 minutes. The first was our own show, titled, "Have You Seen the Milky Way? I Think We May Have Lost It." The show consisted of 3 pre-recorded video segments with a narrative incorporating elements a local audience would relate to, such as references to local landmarks. These video segments were also broken up by live interactive segments to help audiences engage directly with the material, such as counting the stars visible in polluted versus unpolluted skies, and taking on the role of sea turtle hatchlings to see how they could be misled by sky glow. Here is a brief preview.
When we leave too many lights on, the night sky is covered in a blanket of light, hiding some stars from our view. We call it light pollution.
Light pollution? I've never heard of that before.
Light pollution wasn't a problem when I was a kid. Back then, most of this area was farmland. There weren't as many houses, the university was smaller, and there were only a few gas stations. It was so much darker because there just weren't that many lights around, so we could see the Milky Way just fine. But now, see that light over there, low in the sky? That's the glow from the stadium and all of the street lights along the roads nearby. All of that light together makes it so we can only see the brightest stars.
So the more lights on, the fewer stars we see?
Yeah, that's the idea.
The second show, Dark Side of Light, is a freely available documentary-style show that communicates the same information aimed at a broader target audience. This structure made it an effective control for the Milky Way show, as its primary difference was the lack of local and narrative elements. Therefore, any major differences in audience takeaways from the two shows could likely be traced back to that difference. In addition, a live star talk was given prior to showings of Dark Side of Light to control for the inclusion of Milky Way's interactive segments. Here is a brief preview.
Welcome. Welcome to a planetarium, a place of wonders. A place with a truly dark sky filled with thousands of glittering stars slowly sailing above your heads. This is what we come here for. Don't you find it odd that we no longer expect such beauty in our daily lives? Daily lives, that's the thing. We humans are, after all, diurnal beings. We live our lives in the day, when there is plenty of light. This is the kind of view we have grown accustomed to at night, when there is plenty of light too. To many, this does not feel unnatural anymore.
To gather participants, mailing lists and community outreach were used to contact families in the local and surrounding communities, which are suburban and rural towns in the northeastern United States. We invited them to attend an educational planetarium show. The target audience was children roughly 8 to 12 years old, but all ages were welcome. Families were encouraged to come together, as research suggests that family learning could help children engage with the show, benefiting from working together with their parents or guardians to learn the material and brainstorm solutions. The resulting dataset consisted of 136 people across 52 families, 64 of which were children and 72 of which were adults, divided into the demographics shown here. IRB approval was granted from the university's Human Subjects Board prior to the study, and consent or assent was given by all participating adults and children. Upon arrival, each participant completed a pre-survey assessing them on their prior knowledge of light pollution and any opinions they held about it. Once completed, audiences were brought into the planetarium to watch one of the two programs. Another survey was given out directly afterwards, repeating most of the questions to show how their thoughts had changed. Additionally, a collaborative activity sheet was passed out, encouraging families to brainstorm their own solutions to light pollution together. Finally, an optional follow-up survey was sent out 2 weeks later to ask about any changes families might have made to reduce light pollution around their home or community. These follow-up surveys were primarily answered by the adults, and gift cards were offered as incentive. Survey questions were compiled from several prior published light pollution surveys and adjusted to better target the concepts and attitudes we intended for them to measure. Across the full set of surveys, 4 main categories of questions were included: knowledge questions, awareness and opinion questions, motivation questions, and action-taking questions. The knowledge questions, included on the initial pre- and post surveys, primarily consisted of a sliding scale on which audiences were asked to rank light pollution's effects on a few different categories, from highly negative to highly positive. We included categories that were negatively affected by light pollution, such as sea turtles and sleep patterns, as well as a few that are not affected. The latter were included to determine if participants could tell the difference between affected and unaffected categories, and were removed from the evaluation pool after the fact. Remaining questions were graded on a 2-point scale, with highly negative receiving full credit, negative partial credit, and all other answers no credit. Each individual's pre-survey score was then subtracted from their post-survey score, allowing us to only see the points on which they improved. For example, anyone who initially answered positively for light pollution's effect on sea turtles, but then responded with negatively on their post-survey would end up with a score of 1, while anyone who already answered highly negatively on their pre-survey and repeated it on their post would receive a score of 0, as they already understood and had no further room to improve. Improvement scores were then tested for each question via a Wilcoxon analysis. Comparing overall pre-post results indicated that audiences show significant improvement across most categories. This held true across both programs. The only category that did not show significant improvement was light pollution's impact on stargazing, which was most likely a case of ceiling effect, because audiences were already aware of this before the Planetarium show. Next, we divided the dataset up to look at the results of the 2 programs separately, and then subdivided those between adults and children. Some differences begin to appear. Most notably, there was a lack of significant improvement across most categories for dark side adults, but as with the stargazing category earlier, this appears to be a result of ceiling effect. Direct comparison of the post results of both programs, made by running the scores through a Kruskal-Wallis H-test, showed the biggest difference between knowledge in how light pollution harms sea turtles. This was significantly higher for the Milky Way adults than the dark side adults, and approaching significance for the children in the same direction. The awareness and opinion questions were measured on a 7-point Likert scale. These were tested similarly to the knowledge questions, but without the 2-point system, as we were not grading opinions for correctness. Pre- versus post tests of this data showed that overall, awareness and concern notably increased among audiences for 10 of the 11 questions, the last of which missed significance by a narrow margin. Program versus program testing showed few significant differences between awareness and opinions between the 2 groups, with the exception of one question on concern for the amount of light pollution in one's own neighborhood, which was significantly different for children in favor of the dark side program. In other words, as a whole, participants showed significant improvement in their awareness of light pollution and their stance towards addressing it. The final pre- and post-survey questions asked audiences to select from a list any actions that they would be willing to take to decrease light pollution around their homes, from closing their blinds to making changes to their light fixtures. Overall pre versus post total counts and mean differences showed an increase across all of these proposed solutions except for closing the blinds, which was initially highest and likely another case of ceiling effect. The average total number of actions considered also increased noticeably from pre to post, with an extra 2 to 3 actions being selected per person. This held up across both programs, with little to no significant difference occurring between the 2. Overall, participants showed significant improvement in their willingness to decrease light pollution around their homes. Finally, the follow-up survey asked participants about actions taken regarding light pollution in the 2 weeks since the Planetarium show. Almost half discussed light pollution with others, either amongst themselves, with their friends and family, or with others in the community. The majority of participants, specifically 64%, noted taking some kind of action since seeing the Planetarium show, the most common of which was turning off lights more frequently. Collaborative data is still being processed, but many families came up with their own ideas to help tackle light pollution. Once again, the most common was reducing light usage, but another common answer was taking steps to inform others and call them to action as well, such as reaching out to their local representatives to encourage policy changes, or bringing it to the attention of homeowners associations. By taking action and passing their newly acquired knowledge on, audiences felt that they could encourage widespread change. The most prominent takeaway from all of this is that both shows demonstrated success at increasing families' awareness of and concern for the issue around light pollution and giving them the knowledge and motivation needed to start making changes. And most of those who reported back actually did make those changes, however big or small their start. This speaks volumes about the potential of the Planetarium in tackling light pollution, and by extension, potential to help combat other socio-scientific problems as well. It's also worth noting that, while the local narrative show did not surpass the documentary show in terms of effectiveness, it was on par with it, which is an achievement in itself. This suggests that those trying to make change in their community could find success in a similar approach. Even with a relatively low production budget and a small team, focusing on your target audience with local elements could help to successfully communicate ideas and foster engagement with the material on the level of a documentary-style production. This project leaves open the potential for many directions of future research. For instance, additional program designs to compare and additional qualitative measurements could be used to further evaluate the effectiveness of specific elements used in each show and how audiences felt about them. It would also help to center these shows around a different topic, such as sound pollution or climate change. This could show if the Planetarium is as effective in encouraging engagement with other socio-scientific issues as it is for light pollution. Notably, a few families mentioned that they wanted to take action but could not due to socioeconomic or location-specific restraints. Evaluating the relationship between these topics and motivation or ability to act could be useful to inform the design of similar call-to-action presentations in the future. Overall, while we initially set out to compare the effectiveness of two different presentation styles in the Planetarium, we found that both the local narrative and the broader documentary styles were highly successful at increasing audience understanding and awareness of the issue and motivating them to act. These findings highlight the potential of both styles in future science outreach efforts, as well as the overall value of the Planetarium in education and engagement. Used effectively, the Planetarium has the power to connect to an audience and encourage them to make positive change. Thank you all very much for listening. Our sources and funding are listed as follows. If you have any further questions or comments for our team after today's discussion, please reach out to one of us by email. Thank you.